Click the subscribe button below. If you find the information useful, please click the like button, to help others find our content. For more information you can visit our website, at thejerusalemassembly.org.
The Jerusalem Assembly. Beyond the Bible Series. January 11, 2016. The Nephilims by Ruben D. Garcia. There are various secrets and mysteries within the Bible, some are intriguing and other mind-boggling, so to speak. To me, the related story within the Bible of the Nephilims is one of these. The Bible speaks so little of them, yet their actions brought upon humanity of their time chaos, sin, and finally utter destruction, and many Bible readers know very little of their background and purpose on earth. Well, strap yourself in good, because I am about to provide some enlightenment to this quandary. As always, let's begin at the beginning. The Jewish Bible simple states that the Nephilims were nothing more than divine beings. In Christian Bibles they are identified as the sons of God. I am inclined to accept the Judaic version because it is more reasonable than simply saying that they were the offspring of God, Genesis 6:1-2. I know that this may sound absurd to most Bible readers, but remain with an open mind and consider the following. First, where did these beings, whether divine or sons, come from, and why were they here on earth among the human descendants of Cain and Seth, Genesis 4:16-26. Second, these should be the questions all Bible readers should be asking themselves, instead of accepting the explanation that the members of the Council of Nicaea provided us in 325 AD, when the current version of the Bible so many of us use and rely on today was compiled. In fact, during this period there were a large number of ancient religious documents that were prohibited from publishing or use as doctrine. There were better writings not only in content but in realism than the ones the Council chose. For centuries, these valuable documents were hidden from the public but now are being allowed to be published. These ancient documents give us quite a different outlook of the people, their worshipping, their beliefs, and their religious traditions of the ancient times, which allow expanding in whom and what were these divine beings. It is with this idea that I will boldly go where not too many Bible scholars go, and simple tell you that these divine beings or sons of God were nothing more than simple aliens, or you can call them ETS, extraterrestrials. Is this bold and absurd? Not if you follow the writings and interpret as it was originally intended by the ancient writers. Remember that the Bible does provide us with a slight view of the heavens before the creation of the earth. We all can recall the Bible stories told during our Sunday school classes about the divine battle between Michael and his legions against Lucifer and these so-called angelic beings that followed Lucifer, being cast from heaven to an eternal life of shame and dishonor. It is this scenario that the movie Noah tried to depict. Well, this divine incident is found in Isaiah 14:12. So, we can assume that divine beings spoken throughout the Bible in Genesis and Job were to be understood as angels. However, I feel strongly that the divine beings spoken of in Genesis are not the same beings spoken of in Job 2:1. In fact, they are quite different both in their nature and their purpose. The divine beings that saw how beautiful the daughters of men were and took wives from among those that pleased them, Genesis 6:1-2, are not the same divine beings that stand before God before his celestial throne, Job 1:6. These Nephilims are the descendants from the creatures or beings God made and already maintained a presence on the earth as God created man, Genesis 1:27-15, 3:1. Even today, most Bible teachers teach that the so-called sons of God were fallen angels from the grace of God, and they also teach that Satan, the adversary, was cast on earth along with them, Satan for his betrayal and his followers for joining him. That is the most common tale of these beings and their influence on man. Nevertheless, there is much more to this tale, because the Bible makes it very interesting and explicit that during the punishment of Cain for murdering his brother Abel, Cain is expelled and traveled east to the land of Nod, where he found a wife who bore him children, Genesis 4:17. So, where did this wife come from? And, it gets better. The Bible does not even give a name to this wife of Cain. It only identifies her as his wife. To accommodate this oversight, most Bible readers have been told that Adam and Eve had children in addition to Abel and Cain. Well, that is wrong. If this was to be true that Adam and Eve had more than 2 children, the Bible would have made an emphasis of this. For example, the Bible would have commented that God would have also expelled them or at least confronted Cain's wife also, or better yet, God could have easily kept her within the Garden of Eden because she and the other children had not done any disobedience. The more you think about it, you can reconcile that the Bible was portraying 2 different cultures existing on earth at the time of Adam and Eve. The fact is that after Adam and Eve's expulsion from the Garden of Eden, Abel and Cain went about their daily existence. Alongside them were other beings in existence that somehow knew about each other but did not interact as the Bible depicts it, Genesis 4:17. Another consideration could be that God may have created another Adam and another woman. The Bible seems to imply that there was a first Adam and a first woman, Genesis 1:27-28. Later, we discover in Genesis chapter 2, verse 21-23 that another Adam from the dust of the earth, Genesis 2:7, was created and who called his mate Ish-Shah or woman. Not to sound contradictory, it seems to me that God in all his greatness created 2 separate Adams to populate the earth, and that they may still be the truth behind the veil of these 2 Adams. Throughout the Bible, we can recognize the presence of this duality in the concept of human attitudes and determinism. We can recognize it by the concept of righteousness and wickedness. It seems the Bible, or at least the writer, is conveying the idea that just as there are 2 trees in the Garden of Eden, one to give life and one to take it, there was also 2 Adams, one to be as in the image of God, and one to be as in the image of the adversary or the serpent, Genesis 1:27, 3:1. Many ancient cultures give testimony that these 2 concepts were an integral part of humanity of their time. The never-ending battles between those who follow and do not follow God's mandates has been with us since Noah's time through Jeshua, Jesus, time, and will culminate with the eradication of wickedness from humanity, Revelation 20:10, 14-15. Until then, the wicked succeeds and prospers. The righteous suffers and awaits vindication, Psalm 12:8, Ecclesiastes 8:14, Matthew 21:41. Therefore, I can refer that the angelic beings that married the earthly women were beings not from earth, and this can be ascertained by the difference between their offspring and the offspring of earth's men, Genesis 6:4. Keep in mind that the Bible clearly stated that the divine beings sought women that pleased them. To what content did this pleasing mean? You can only speculate. Did this alien breed seek servitude first, then beauty, and finally loyalty? The Bible is not clear on this, but one can assume that pleasing may have meant more than just liking someone. It is my belief that it meant that these alien creatures or beings sought women of strong stamina and fortitude. The less desirable ones would have been made available for the earthly men who may have had no say in the matter, Genesis 6:4. Is it possible to think that the men, or at least the descendants from Cain, who were considered fierce and feared so easily, gave in to the wishes and desires of these so-called sons of God? Well, guess what? The Bible does give us a hint of what may have taken place for the sons of God to have such an influence on the men of earth, and willingly provided their beautiful women to them. The underlying reason may have been the avarice of Cain's descendant, Tubal-Cain, who seemed to be the one that benefited not only from the knowledge of these so-called sons of God in the forging of all implements of copper and iron, but also in the knowledge of making war, destruction of natural resources to derive to such implements. Only these alien beings could possess the knowledge and usage of such ores, Genesis 4:22. Exchanging women for knowledge was just another interpretation of the tree of knowledge of good and bad. The beautiful women were the good of the tree and the implements the bad. It was the knowledge of using these implements of copper and iron that gave into killing of humans for personal gains and possessions. This act of inflicting injuries with these implements of copper and iron is portrayed in the Bible by the actual words of Cain's descendant, Lamech, who conveys to his wives that he had slain a man for wounding him and a lad for bruising him, Genesis 4:23. It is clear that the beings of the Bible taking the beautiful women were not the angelic ones we were made to think, but ETS that occupied the land of Nod and existed along with Cain's descendants, Genesis 3:1, 4:16. It is clear that from these cohabitations, humanity spread to different categories of humanoids. The powerful became heroes and renowned, Genesis 6:4. The obedient and the ones with God's Spirit in them became but a fraction of what populated the earth, Genesis 6:3. Lastly, there were the ones of less renowned statute that followed the directives and wishes of the powerful renown and became subservients to the Nephilims, Genesis 6:5. Thus, before the floods, corruption existed in all aspects of daily life. Destruction and lawlessness of an immoral society was the end result of these categories. From the time of Adam, Noah's forefather, 10 generations had passed. This does not seem like a long time, but it was. The beings that Cain associated with after departing from God's presence seemed to have multiplied rapidly, whereas Seth's descendants seemed to have been small. This seems factual when God found only Noah to be righteous and blameless among such large population of humanoids, Genesis 6:11. The same scenario is also found later when Abraham tried to intercede for the righteous of Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 18:20, 25, 32. That is, Abraham's people were small in comparison to the number of inhabitants of the cities that surrounded him. It is my understanding that even though the Bible is short in explaining it, it is not clueless of the explanations just shared, but if you go beyond the basic interpretations, and try to see beyond the horizon, one must not ignore the obvious, and the obvious thing in here is that there were other beings or creatures along with men during this tumultuous and lawless period. For me this is the truth, because for God to be so angry to the point to eradicate all living things, God must have been extremely angry at every one of these divine beings because he knew who they were and who brought them into being. Their intervention and association with men was not what God had planned or at least expected from mankind. Thus, along with this anger there was sadness beyond human comprehension, because finding one man among such a large number of earth inhabitants describes an earth of such deterioration that can only be unimaginable, Genesis 6:6. I wonder how God would consider our earth today. We are still with the same attitudes, the same wickedness, same characters of Noah's time in power and directing our destiny to that already forecast of destruction and restitution. The beings of renown are here. They are exercising wickedness and profiting from it. They can be found from a simple laborer to a politician. In some cases, they sit and judge God's words and mandate corrupting the masses more and more. Jeshua prognosticated this during his ministry over 2,000 years ago, and here we are acting in the same wicked ways as during Noah's time, John 5:43. Finally, I am certain that the final confrontation between the children of light and the children of darkness will be as real as it was back before the floods. Most of the apocalyptic prophets have indicated this reckoning among God and the wicked modern Nephilims, Ezekiel 11:2. To disregard the truth, one can no longer ignore the obvious. Our world and the three societies that sprung from Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, are now at each other's throats. There is greed, religious intolerance and persuasion, political and social unrest, financial uncertainties, mistrust, denial, and even denying existence of God, and of course His commandments. Everything is so obvious that one wonders, where is the mind of the children of Seth? Should there not be a larger culture that seeks peace and harmony among all humans? Maybe, we are not all Seth descendants as we have been made to think, because instead of harmony, peace, and justice, we are in turmoil from every corner of this globe. It seems as if the Nephilims are still governing our destiny as they did during Noah's time. That is kind of frightening. Let's hope that there is still a few of Noah's descendants out there that yet can capitalize on God's good side, and maybe a more favorable outcome we can see during our lifetime. If not, then it is my strongest desire that somehow out there is another Abraham that can intercede for humanity, because if there is none, we are doomed, and the apocalyptic prophecies would come to pass, and the end result would be more catastrophic than the floods, Isaiah 30:27, Revelation 13:13. I often wonder, how would mankind act when all of what God, Jeshua, and the prophets said would happen to mankind takes effect? How about the non-believer, the wicked, the insolent, and the lawless react? How would his behavior be? In my opinion, most would seek consolation by going to churches seeking forgiveness or absolution. By then, no matter where you go or whom you seek, they cannot be of much spiritual help, because they will all be in such distress and anguish that no matter what would be said or provided will not be enough. Revelation 6:16, 16:20. In short, recognize that the flood did not end the Nephilims. Rather, I like to think that some of their offspring survived and their descendants are now among us, still directing and manipulating our human destiny. Cognizant of this aspect will assist you in understanding the various events unfolding before your eyes. For example, the lack of a spiritual leader among our presidential candidates is a good example of our demise, not different than Noah's time. None of the candidates have God's blessings. How do I know this? Because every one of them is seeking their own agenda. It is no longer for the people, by the people, but rather by me, for me. Sadly, this was what the divine beings sought on the humans of Noah's time. They not only saw how easily they could be persuaded and controlled, to the point that they took the beautiful women from earthly men without any confrontations until the advent of David, the king, 1 Samuel 17:23. However, if one could contemplate the heart of God right now toward mankind, especially America, I think he would consider teaching us a lesson for our insolence and disrespectful attitudes. This lesson would be enacted where it would hurt us the most and deeply: our financial security. I believe strongly that our punishment from all that we have done against His will may come in the aspect of a financial meltdown. It would put America on its knees for such disobedience that we will not recover. I am afraid that this event is not too far into the future. It will drastically change our lives and the way of our existence forever. So what is now left to do? Open your eyes and scope the events of the world. Do not bury your head into the ground. Place an ear to the wind and hear the sound of the apocalyptic end approaching, and finally smell the essence within the apocalyptic winds that a storm is approaching, and prepare accordingly, because from the ancient prophets to Jeshua, and the witnessing of the nation of Israel in our time, my friends, the inevitable is already on the horizon. Do not ignore the obvious. God is working diligently on this earth, and so are the modern Nephilims. The question that remains is, who will you listen to, and who you will follow? The answer to all of this is before you every day. Choose wisely. Shalom.